All right. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Pius Ali. I am a BLAC City Councilor and the co-chair of the Presumpscot Elementary School BLAC Committee. My colleague and co-chair, Mr. Roberto Rodriguez, the chair of the school board, will not be able to join us tonight. And I also apologize for not being able to join you at the last meeting because I had a clash. I had a committee meeting with the city council. Before we go on, we'll give a few, protocols on how tonight's meeting will be. The procedures are committee members will use the raise your hand feature found either by selecting participants at the bottom of the participants screen in the sidebar or the pull down menu found by selecting the 3 dots in the participants video window. Should they wish to address the committee, the chair will be acknowledged. The chair will acknowledge the speaker. Committee members should lower their hands when they are finished speaking. Thank you very much. This is my first time joining you or second time. Do we go around to introduce ourselves or we just go on and start?
They did that at the last meeting, Pius, if you want to do that. Okay,
so I will pass it on to committee members to introduce themselves and what brings them to the table. So anybody can start. Let's do popcorn style so that I don't have to be calling people by name. So Emily.
Hi there, I'm Emily Waugh. I'm actually with Harriman.
Why don't we have the staff introduce themselves first? Mark, do you want to go?
Mark, we can't hear you.
Thank you. I had 2 mute buttons. Sorry about that. Mark Lee with Harriman.
Great. And Lisa?
My name is Lisa Salwin, also with Harriman.
Great. Steve?
Steve Stolford, Portland Public Schools, Facilities.
Okay. Doug?
Doug Sherwood, Portland Public Schools, Facilities.
Great. And I'm Javier Lotano, Superintendent. Angie, do you want to have your Presumpscot staff introduce themselves too?
Yeah, so I'm Angie Taylor, Principal. Annie?
Annie Dalpin, teacher at Presumpscot.
Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Babu, and I'm a teacher at Presumpscot.
Mike?
Hopefully I can do this right. Michael Loring, head custodian at Presumpscot.
And Jen's kind of with us, so Jen. Jen, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that, friends. My name is Jennifer Dubell. I am a parent and a long-term sub with the ELL department at Presumpscot.
And Aura?
Hi, my child decided to stop melting down right before, so that's good news. The fun of Zoom. I'm Aura Russell Better and a parent of 2 kids at Presumpscot. Thanks.
And Laura? You gotta unmute yourself, Laura.
Sorry, my name is Laura Fries and I'm a parent at Presumpscot School.
We have Liz.
Hi, Liz LaPierre, parent at Presumpscot.
So I think that's everyone.
I think that's everyone. Great. Did we miss anyone? Just unmute yourself.
I'm Sarah. I'm also a parent at Presumpscot.
Great.
Sarah, I'm so sorry I missed you.
That's what happens when you have 2 pages. Okay, great. I think our Harriman team is going to lead us through the next phase.
Very good. Yes, thank you. And as Javier mentioned, we have a stop time at 7:30 today, so this evening. So we'll cover an update on where we are in the process, and provide a little bit of an opportunity for any questions that folks may have at this time. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to walk us through our agenda of material to cover. Some of it will be familiar to folks, but I think it's important that the more we see it, the more you folks have an opportunity to participate in commenting on our scope of the project. So pretty exciting point in this. And with that, Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. As Mark said, some of this, some folks may have already seen before. We have a series of meetings that we do to make sure all stakeholders are brought up to speed. So, but hopefully we can get the message out to everyone on where we're at. So that said, Presumpscot Elementary School, the agenda for tonight is welcome and approval of prior meeting minutes from our last BLAC. A review of our last BLAC meeting, and a review of Community Forum number 2. And the update, or pretty much an overview of the schedule, project schedule, and we'll talk about communication and next steps before we adjourn the meeting. I just want to make sure everyone got a copy of the prior meeting minutes, and want to understand if anyone had any questions or comments on that before we move on. I don't know, Javier, if we need to do any formal acceptance of the minutes or just acknowledge that folks have received it. Javier, you're on mute, but I think you're saying that we don't need to approve them?
I said I wasn't here. I wasn't at the last BLAC meeting, so I don't know what protocols you all agreed to, but I think if there's enough people that were at the meeting, it would be great to have those formally approved. But I'll defer to the chair.
And I think I'll just note that I don't think that they've ever formally been approved in the past, right?
Okay. So perhaps we can just acknowledge that they're received, and if folks didn't receive them, let us know and we can forward them to you. And if there's any questions, we'll pause for a second to address those.
Looks like Jennifer has her hand raised.
I'm sorry, Javier and Emily were at the same time. What was that?
It looks like Jennifer has her hand raised to say something.
I did not receive those, the notes of the minutes.
They are included in the agenda information on Board Docs, so you have access to those right now.
And I know, Javier, you wanted to take a minute and just remind folks that there is a list of all the members posted on Board Docs for the BLAC. If you could take a look at that and confirm that you are listed on that, and that you see other members that may not be here tonight that are listed. And if you see any errors in email addresses and things like that, please let us know. Our intention is to communicate with everyone. These first couple meetings, it takes a couple tries to get all of that information accurate. So let us know if you see any errors in that. Jennifer, do you have another question, or is your hand still up? You're good. Okay. All right. With that, we will move on. The last BLAC touch point we had were 2 meetings, the end of March and the end of April, where we met with the co-chairs to bring them up to speed on what has taken place thus far in the project, and essentially review the recommendation from the DABC, review the different scenarios that we were looking at that time, provide an overview of the timeline and the agenda for the BLAC meeting and upcoming project meeting dates. When we had our kickoff with the BLAC for Presumpscot, we went over the project schedule on April 23rd, and we also provided project scope and floor plans, as well as outlined planning for Community Forum number 2. Community Forum number 2 occurred on May 13th. And at that forum, we went over we brought the community up to speed on the project schedule. We did the review of Community Forum number 1, and for folks that were part of that, you remember that was the crafting of the design statement for Presumpscot, which was a really fun evening, and the outcome of that was a statement that we will revisit throughout the design of this project and the community through a 3-step process of selecting words and images and really looking at what is the vision for Presumpscot and the essence. Came up with a statement that reads, "A welcoming, diverse family creating spaces for learners to collaborate, grow, and explore." So a really great statement, again, that everyone at Harriman will use throughout this process to make sure we're really capturing the essence of the Presumpscot community. We also talked about the highest priority facility needs. So originally the BFOF looked at a equity scope that was similar at all of the schools through this process, and the budget that we have for each project, we through the recommendation of the DABC and reviewing this with everyone, have more focus on the highest priority needs at each one of these schools, which is really driving the scope for the project. We talked about the project budget, and we went over the school concept designs. The project budget, you can see at the bottom of the screen, was outlined for all 3 projects, and the Presumpscot budget is highlighted there in the green box, showing the construction budget as well as the total project budget. So the highest priority facility needs that were identified at Presumpscot was inspired by what we called, in the essence of the classroom option, but then really used input from Anj as well as the teachers to really get to the heart of what were the highest priority needs. And what those that rose to the top and fit within the project budget are replacing the modular classrooms, so removing them from the site and adding an addition to bring those classrooms into the building, creating a secure and welcoming entrance, making sure that we have a separate gym and cafeteria, creating separate music and art rooms, and providing separate rooms for specialists. Several of the specialists are sharing spaces and making sure that there's accommodations for rooms for each of those specialists, and providing code and accessibility upgrades. Those are things that we have to do when we take on a project like this per the building code. So what does that look like? This is the current concept floor plan, and I will emphasize concept. As we move forward, we'll get more refined with the naming of different spaces, and right now we're in that phase of really nailing down that all the different programs have a home and where they're going. So this doesn't necessarily reflect that effort. That effort's in process, and at the next meeting you'll really see more of a refined floor plan, and we'll be able to speak to the different program locations, and we're getting that prepared so that we can meet with Anj to review that in more detail. But the scope for this project is what I just iterated in the highest priorities, and it's the classroom addition. So these blue areas are really adds to the existing building, and the gray is the existing. If you think about this blue area back here, it's really where the portables are right now. So it's trading portables for a built addition. We will be building a new cafeteria and warming kitchen. And I will say that right now this floor plan is a little misleading. There's really a wall right here that separates the kitchen area from the cafeteria area. Providing a secure entrance. It's not only the entrance, but it's providing the entrance with the programmatic elements adjacent to that entrance to really create the administrative suite of reception, principal, workrooms, as well as the nurse area and other spaces. And then the miscellaneous upgrades. So looking at the life safety requirements, the code requirements, and making sure those are executed throughout the building. Right now, what we have in the addition back here is really looking at adding the pre-K and kindergarten in the addition. And the reason for that is those spaces, square footage wise, are typically bigger than your traditional first grade through 5th grade classrooms. And so in the addition is where we can really provide the adequate space for those programs. And then we have our art and music back here and small group rooms. And essentially what that is those specialty spaces, those specialty programs for the specialists. And they're just not named yet because we're providing many throughout. And as we move forward, they'll kind of settle down. There was a question asked last time about small group rooms between art and music, and this is not what these are. These are actually storage areas, and the plan that you'll see coming forward has additional small group rooms on the floor plan in other locations. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark to go over some of the questions that came out of our community forum earlier this month.
Thank you, Lisa. So as we presented the plan at the community forum, some of the conversations were around the addition in the rear that is intended to be the new cafeteria. And as it was presented, and as Lisa demonstrated, there without a wall separating where the warming kitchen is to the cafeteria, it looked like it was a larger space than the gym. So if there was a question of, well, could that be the gym out back, and the cafeteria would stay in its current location, and so there that was sort of a point that we said, well, we can look at it a little bit further. There are some issues with respect to cost by doing that, by creating the new gym versus the cafeteria. That originally the scope of the work considered having that as a gymnasium addition, but the intent was actually to reduce the size of the addition to fit within budget. So that was really a budget consideration to put that as a cafeteria in the back. The other items that talked about were the fact that there were a number of doors shown in the floor plan in that rear area, and was that a secure way of allowing additional entrance into the building. We want to remind everyone that where we show doors isn't necessarily for entrance, but is necessary for exit safely from the building at different locations. And so the code requires that we have egress at sufficient both size for capacity, but also arrangement, so that people can safely exit the building in the event of an emergency. So when you see doors with swings, it doesn't necessarily mean that those are entrances. The other consideration was the traffic flow and circulation at the front of the building, and that it's a very tight site, constrained site. There's not a lot of additional space, and that we're really looking to see if we can make a few minor changes, but there's not a lot of wholesale changes that can be made, again, just given the size of the site itself. Another one that has come up a number of times in our presentations has to do with staff bathrooms, and we've expanded it to be universal access bathrooms. And so it's single user toilet rooms that and where are they located, and are there enough of them? And so it's an item that we've looked at including in our plan and a number of different locations. So we, from the result of that conversation, we did actually go and add a couple more locations, squeeze them in the rear addition. So great comments that came out of that, and we continue to refine the design based on some of these. Then there was also a conversation regarding the if there's a redistribution of grade levels at the various Portland public schools, how would that impact this school? At this time, it's just we're designing it around the idea of what we know we need for spaces, and as we discussed at the community forum, the new spaces that we're adding are the kindergarten and pre-K rooms, because the standards for the size of those classrooms is larger than a standard classroom. And so a standard classroom may be somewhere between 700 and 800 square feet typically, where a kindergarten and a pre-K classroom would be in the order of 1,000 square feet, and also that it would have a toilet room in the classroom itself. And so when we have the opportunity to build new classrooms, we're designing them to appropriately address those requirements. And so you'll see that that's where we've positioned those new classrooms are in the 4K and pre-K. And so that's how we're kind of addressing the current configuration of what we know to be the program. So and with that, I'll move back to Lisa to discuss. I think we're at schedule coming up next, Lisa.
And to find the unmute button, yes, we have the project schedule. So thank you for that overview, Mark, and thank you to everyone that participated in the community forum. It's always a great evening to really hear from the community and have a nice touch point to bring people up to speed, but also hear thoughts, concerns, and celebrations around the project. So the BFOF project schedule, this is the schedule for all 3 projects. And I'll reorient people who may have seen this before or may not be familiar for how the schedule is set up. But the top portion here is what we call the stakeholders schedule. The middle part is the agenda, kind of what is discussed at each of those stakeholders. And then below is the milestones for the development of the project. And our ultimate goal is creating construction documents that can be bid by contractors. And so that's the different milestones down here. The stakeholder meetings, there are a couple public forums. So we've had the first one where we drafted or crafted the design statement for Presumpscot, and then we had the project update earlier this month. The next one will be in the fall, and so essentially we'll spend the time between public forum number 2 and public forum number 3 progressing the design, and the public saw the concept and the information for the design and the scope of work, and ultimately before we go out to bid, providing people an update as to what the project looks like. We have many check-in points along the way with cost estimators and other things to refine the scope of work and the documents and the budget. And so that's a great touch point there so people understand what we're moving forward with. The yellow, I'll go over the colors and what they mean. The orange are our bi-weekly meetings with Steve and Doug to talk about all the projects and the progress to date and questions we have and different meetings we need to set. The yellow is the DABC monthly meetings. So we meet with them the week prior to the BLAC. And then we provide our update to the BLACs monthly as well. And so those happen throughout. We do take the month of July off, usually due to summer vacations and folks taking some time. I know this year may be a little bit different. Then we have our school board meetings up here, as well as other key sign-off meetings with planning board and different public safety meetings. So the update at this point in the meetings with BLAC and DABC, we're really at a project update. So monthly we'll update you on our progress, how things are going. Also, ahead of this meeting, you all should have received a one-page update, and we'll get to that in a minute too. The milestones, so we're in design development. We've defined the scope of work, and we are developing the design. And our next milestone will be completed towards the latter half of the summer, and that's where we go in construction documents. All 3 schools are happening at the same time. The goal is that they will be bid at the same time. They will go out to bid late fall, and a contract will be awarded either the end of this year or beginning of next year with a targeted spring construction start date. The communication we'll touch on for, yep.
I'm sorry, there was a hand raised about the schedule.
Oh, okay. Was there a question about the schedule before we move on? I apologize.
Yeah, I just was curious. We only got notification of tonight's meeting because Annie had asked when the next meeting was. Are there meeting dates for the BLAC that have been kind of pre-scheduled? And if so, can we get a list of those meeting dates so that we can plan accordingly?
Absolutely. And our apologies for the late communication on that. So the BLAC happens on, I think it's the third Thursday of every month. So if you project out the third Thursday of every month, that's the sequence of the BLAC. I think I have that. Or is it the fourth Thursday? I think we're the fourth. Yeah. I apologize. DABC is the third. BLAC is the fourth Thursday of every month. So that's the rotation.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't realize that from the schedule. So if there are like actual dates and times that have been pre-established, if that information could be emailed out, I might be the only one, but I'm guessing there are others that would find that information helpful to have ahead of time.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that that's clearly communicated. I know that the time and the we're trying to rotate all the BLACs. We meet with all three in the same night, and we're trying to rotate those just so that folks that may have different commitments, it doesn't always fall at the same time and you may not be able to make it. They do start at 6 and go until 8:15. So it will be somewhere in that window on the fourth Thursday of every month, except for July. But
That's
we can
Thank you.
we can work with Janet and others to maybe get something a little bit more formal posted on that.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I think I see another hand raised as well.
Yes, I've got a question. Is the new gymnasium, is that completely off the board now, per se?
I think right now, Mike, we're still looking at it a little bit, but it right now the direction we're moving, I guess, is in the direction of that as being the new cafeteria out back. So I won't say it's off the table entirely. We haven't constructed it yet, but that's the good news. Right.
Well, I'm just concerned about the amount of spacing that's for kids in group assemblies and things like that they have during the school session, during the day. If we had something where they could just sit down on bleachers as opposed to sitting on the floors, that type of thing, and after school activities like basketball, where everybody could park potentially out back and have one entrance and exit out of the building, and then putting maybe fire doors up so you can just close those pieces off where there's no roaming around the area in the hallways and such. That was just a primary concern of mine.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I think just to touch on that a little bit, originally we had looked at putting the gym on, and it became kind of cost prohibitive to fit it within the budget of Presumpscot. And so we looked at getting a little bit more creative because the cafeteria is less square footage than a gymnasium. And so that was what caused that change in the scope. But to Mark's point, it's something we'll continue to explore, but it does require an increase in square footage to execute that to a elementary sized gym.
Okay, I also have one more question pertaining to the art and music rooms where they're facing the south side. Is it a possibility to swap those over facing towards the east, rectangulate the shape of the building, and then add a third space within that side of the building, the east side? It's just basically a rectangle shape as opposed to having different contours within the building.
We can explore the location of the art and music. When we start to add spaces, again, it's square footage, and that's what drives up cost. So every square foot has a dollar value associated with it. So right now we're kind of at that sweet spot of square footage to align with the project budget. But we'll definitely we can look at the reconfiguration and what that might, the impact of that might be.
Okay, because I've noticed, because wouldn't that simplify the actual building itself, so it'd be less labor charge or something like that? The square footage wouldn't be that much of a difference, correct?
Not necessarily. It's really driven by square footage, but there are definitely trade-offs depending on shape and things like that. But there's also different volumes. Each of those spaces is a different volume. So the cafeteria and areas is much higher than like a music and an art room, and the classrooms are even lower than that. So there already is sort of that three-dimensional change in space as well. So it's not just necessarily a box, if you will.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
I think Aura had a hand up.
Oh, thanks. I actually just wanted to ask a schedule thing, but just to follow up on something Michael said, just quickly, I just wanted to flag a couple other questions about the gym situation. I guess I'm just curious, when we were talking about this, if the gym being in the back is not an option, is there still an option for the existing gym to have any renovation to that space or not? So that was my one question. And then also just adding on to the performance, like I'm just trying to picture which of those spaces would then be able to be also used as any kind of performance space, because right now that's a really difficult thing for us. So I just want to be thinking about how does that fit into whether the gym or the cafeteria, where those are. And then just also separate entrance piece, like whether it is able to be in the back or not. Is either of those able to be using our gym as, community center separate entrance? So just kind of wanted to flag those questions. And then are we not having a July meeting was another question. I remember you mentioned that, Lisa, that July. Just was wondering if that's the plan.
So I'll start with the last one and try and work my way backwards. My understanding is right now we do not have a July meeting planned, but that may change. I'm not sure. I would defer to Steve and Doug and Javier on that.
I think we customarily don't have July meetings, and I guess if there were a reason to have a meeting, we would, obviously reconsider that. But at this point, we don't have Board of Education meetings during July and things along those lines. So I don't know, if the Harriman team thought that we needed a meeting, we could have one, but otherwise, I don't. We're not planning.
And then I think you had two other parts to your question. One was about renovation of if the cafeteria is in the back, is the existing gym receiving a renovation? And then the second part of that question, I apologize. What was this? There's a second part to your question in regards.
Because in past discussions about this gym piece, I think it was probably in the first forum or just previous discussions, there had been the thought about the gym space being something that's used by the community and having potentially another entrance that was able to be accessed not through the front school building. So I just wondered, was that part of thinking about the gym space? And if it is one or the other, does that affect the ability to do that?
We can definitely look at ways to close off parts of the building. We've started to indicate that. You can see there's a set of double doors here. So if you were to come in, we can close off this wing. We can look at what we can do on this hallway. We've started to introduce it really here as well to keep folks from coming down in this direction as well. So if the gym were to stay there, we can definitely look at ways to close off sections of the building. So if the public is coming in to use that, they don't have kind of free reign to the whole building. Currently, with this scope of work, the focus has really been trying to get the extra spaces for this school. And there wasn't necessarily monies assigned to then turning around to renovate the existing, what is labeled as gymnasium.
I think Principal Taylor had maybe her hand up as well.
So first I want to say thank you for listening to us and the feedback. And I know this has been quite a process. And this is my first time at this panel. I'm really excited, by the way. I don't want to continue to talk about the gym, but the gym is something that's really important to the community. Academics is the most important thing. Course, because that's how kids are going to get to their next journey after high school. But having said that, there's some issues with the current gym that are safety issues. The current basketball hoops have to be put up manually. It's an issue for parents. Also, because it's so small, many of the kids and parents have to be on the exterior of the gym, and they're really nervous about someone getting really hurt during the games. So I think it is really important to at least consider, because this seems like a pretty big space with the warming kitchen over on the outside in terms of square feet. And I do understand that it's cheaper. I was there for the first meeting and I said I want a cafeteria. I know I said that. But I would like to have it just looked at to see if that really is a possibility. Because if you did that, it would make the entire Presumpscot community happy. And it feels like we have the other things. We have the classroom spaces that we need. We have the specialist spaces that we need. But that one thing is really important to this community. So I'll stop talking.
Great, and I think
go ahead.
Elizabeth, I'm trying to get as many questions as we can here because we're up against the 7:30. But Elizabeth, I think also had a question.
Yes, and I had to make a food delivery, so I'm on my car. I apologize. But I hope you can hear me okay and that there's not too much background noise. I have two questions. After my comment, I'm going to echo what Angie said and just thank you for listening to us and for continuing to work really hard to meet the community's needs. My first question is when the 3-school construction project is put out to bid, I know it's going to be put out all at once, but is the bidding process going to be as a group where all 3 schools are going to be awarded to a particular contractor, or are multiple contractors going to bid on the different schools? My second question is, and if you can't answer this tonight, if someone could let us know what the price differential is between having the cafeteria in the rear as opposed to a gym. That's it. Thanks.
So the answer to your first question is the intention as of right now, and we'll continue to monitor this and make a determination, or revisit this determination. But right now, the goal is to issue all 3 of these to bid at once to a single contractor. The second question you had was on the price differential between a gym and a cafeteria, and we don't have that with us right now, but would happily follow up with folks afterwards to revisit that. We understand there's a strong desire for us to revisit that program element in this design.
And probably we're trying to squeeze in Annie Thompson. I think you also may have a question.
Annie, I think he's
Annie.
speaking to you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear my name. I was wondering what you were saying about the detailed plan, about, right now we've got a mislabeling on small group when it's really storage, and there's a lot of spaces that just say resource. And so the ELL teachers and the special ed teachers specifically are wondering where they are going to be working in this new configuration. And so I was just hoping you could tell me a little bit more about that detailed plan.
So right now what we're doing is we have all those lists of rooms and the one specifically you mentioned, and going back to the plan. The plan has evolved a little bit from what you're seeing on the screen right now, and it's a little hard to describe exactly the evolution of it, but at the next meeting here in June, we'll have that, and we'll be able to show you exactly where those programs are going within the building. But we're aware, you know, speech, ELL, all of those are not labeled right now. We tried to squeeze as many of these, what we're calling small group or resource rooms, in there, but we will have that detailed plan next month to review with folks, so we can do that sort of checks and balance that we have everybody accounted for.
That's great. The only other thing I noticed, and I'm not sure if it's going to come in the detailed plan, is there's a workspace for teachers. I'm assuming that's sort of the copy room, but I don't see a place for us to eat lunch. We used to have a room, and I don't know that that's here anymore.
We'll we can definitely look at that, to your point, in the detailed plan going forward.
All right, I think we have folks from the Reiki that are here at 7:30. I know we have probably some more questions. You are welcome to, these folks that have been here from Presumpscot, stay through this presentation if you want. Our next steps are the next fourth Thursday of June will be our next meeting, and that will be June 25th. And we'll try to make sure that everyone has enough notification so that you all have it on your calendar prior to that. So I think we're gonna shift gears now, take a brief pause as we get ready for the Reiki group. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.